Am I allowed to break any of the commandments? No.
No.
But yet, here we are.
Yeah.
Not resting.
Yeah.
I think the last time I had a full Sabbath day, I've taken partial Sabbaths in moments where I gallivanted off and didn't do anything that was work related. I've done that recently, but the last time I had a full day, I think it's been maybe a month since I've done that because, well, shoot, I got Sunday to do homework.
Yeah. So there is the practical aspect of keeping Sabbath, of whether or not it's even doable. But then there's also, I think, the theological grounding for why we should keep Sabbath as Christians specifically. Because you could just chalk this up to, you have to do it because the Old Testament says that you have to do it, right? But when we understand the theological underpinnings of what Sabbath is and what it's a picture of, then I think we start to have a compelling vision of why we need to keep Sabbath. So we started by saying that Adam and Eve's first full day alive is Sabbath.
Right, we did say that, and I think, are we going back?
We're going back.
We're going back. All right, get your time machines out.
So yeah, we would need that for sure. They are the co-rulers of creation, Adam and Eve. They are created as the image of God. So they are like statues of Emperor God in the Garden of Eden as a symbol of God's rule, as a proclamation of God's rule over creation. And they are to mediate that rule to creation. They are representatives of God's rule on creation. They are also the high priests of creation, which means they go into the presence of God on behalf of creation to bring the praise of creation, including theirs, to God, and they bring God's love and loving rule to creation. They also have the job of keeping the garden, keeping it safe from wilderness creatures that might want to crawl in there and do bad things, or spiritual beings that might want to do bad things in the garden, right? They're supposed to keep the garden. They're supposed to tend it. So they're supposed to be flourishing in there. And this is their job. But their first full day alive, they don't do any of that.
They rest.
They rest.
They exist in themselves, and they don't do anything, and they rest. And if that was that important, if rest is that important, I'm gathering that the first day our species ever existed was a restful one.
Yeah.
I think we need to reorient our priorities to match it up, which gets into my next question. So we've established here that the Sabbath is a must. Why are we hold these other commandments really highly, don't break them. But this one we're like, yeah, screw it, whatever. Do it, grind it out.
Yeah.
We do live in a culture though, here in the United States, that is grind it out.
Yeah.
Work, 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 work.
Yep.
And that's how you become successful. So then is it practical? How do we practically live this out in the lives that we have?
Well, first we need to understand that we need a new culture. And
correct.
That's first.
That's
because
the big one.
if we have the same framework as the culture around us, no, it's not practical. Don't even try. But the culture around us sees rest as a reward for working your butt off.
You get those vacation days. You work harder for more vacation days or something like that.
Which you'll never take because, let's be honest, you got to keep working.
I got to feed my family, whatever.
Right.
Hey, getting that money,
Yep.
that paycheck gives me a dopamine hit, and I like that more.
So that's our culture, is thinking that we work in order to get rest. But what we just described is the grace of God that says you don't work in order to get rest. You work from a place of rest. Rest is God's gift to you, such that your inception as a species is within this place of rest. And it's a place where, remember, they're in the Garden of Eden. They are alive in this place, resting in the presence of God with God's creation, and all of them are living in harmony. Right? And then this becomes a picture, right? Because remember who Adam and Eve are. They are the rulers of the universe. Well, not the universe. They are rulers of creation. They are stepping off of their throne to stop ruling the subjects, the deer, the bears, right?
The lions, the tigers.
Yeah, all of that. They are stepping off of their throne not to rule them, but to be with them. Jesus in 1 Corinthians 15 is described by Paul as once he subjects all things, once God subjects all things under Jesus' feet as the ruler of the universe, Jesus himself will become subject to God so that God might be all in all. Jesus, the new Adam, the king, steps off of the throne to be with his creation in Sabbath rest, to enjoy, to play, right?
Just imagine if someone in today's corporate world did that.
Yeah.
Like there's a businessman, he sells private jets, and he comes up on my YouTube shorts or whatever, and he talks about business and all that cool stuff, and he talks about how he's always grinding. One of his points is, hey, get a jet because it'll save you time, and time is money, and you'll be able to do things more efficiently. And I'm working this day, I'm working this day, I'm working this day, I'm working this day. And I just think, man, if this guy just stopped for a day, his company would crumble.
Yeah, which is awful.
Which is an awful thing. And
it will crumble
exists.
once he dies then.
Yeah, but he's dead then, so he won't care.
But but here's the thing. You see how our addiction to work because of greed or anxiety ultimately brings about death. Because here's the thing. If I take, so I'm a youth pastor, I take Sabbath rest, I don't work for a whole day, that means if there is a problem during that time, someone else has to deal with it. Which means when I'm not here, someone else has been practicing this whole time to deal with it, and won't bring about death and suffering and things crumbling apart.
It's not a one-man
because it's
show.
not about me. It's not a one-man show, right? And I think a lot of people in ministry have this fear of going up onto the mountain with God at Sinai and coming back down the mountain, and the people are worshiping golden calves, right? So there's that fear of like, if I take any time off, things are going to crumble. But the other fear that we have is we'll go up on the mountain and come back and they'll be fine. Because then that means
that was recently very relevant to my life.
Because it means that you're not needed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to be needed.
Yes.
I want to be the one looked to.
Yep.
And what if I'm not? Uh-oh.
And you're not going to be for the vast majority of humanity. But that's the thing, is if we're going to see our position of influence, wherever we're at, as a gift from God, we have to continually treat it as a gift by giving it away. If you don't give it away, it ends up rotting. And there's no presence of God in it anymore because you refuse to treat it the way that it was meant to be treated, as gift, as grace. Okay, so then there's the question of practicality, right? Which I want to get to. I think it's worth trying to figure out how to practically do this, because it is also a picture of the gospel, right? So because it is a sign of God's covenant with us, right, through Moses at Sinai, what we see in the Bible is that the signs and the symbols of the Old Testament are only done away with by Jesus in the New Testament when the fulfillment of the sign has come. So the tabernacle, the temple, those are done away with. Why? Because those were about the presence of God.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we have the Spirit and we are the temple, we do away with the temple of stone and brick, right? The sacrificial system was pointing ahead to Jesus. So we have stopped doing blood sacrifices because the fulfillment of those things has happened. In Jesus. We still marry today, are married and given in marriage, because marriage is a symbol of the wedding of heaven and earth, the wedding of God's people and God himself in perfect union. Mm-hmm. Once that happens, we won't have the sign anymore.
Right.
Sabbath is not complete yet.
Will it ever be complete?
It will be at the last day. That's when we enter into that Sabbath rest. The new heavens and the new earth is that Sabbath rest where Jesus comes off of the throne to play in perfect harmony with us and with the created order, right? Mm-hmm. And we all get to do that with each other. We play with the animals, we play with God, we play with each other. That it's rest, right? That's what's coming. So why practice Sabbath now? Because it's pointing ahead. It's pointing backwards to my creation and the way that God designed me to remind me that I am finite and I can't do everything and that I'm not that important, even though I'm important. Mm-hmm. I'm not that important that God needs me in order for work to get done. It points back to that, and it points ahead to that Sabbath rest that we are anticipating. And what I think happens is that when we practice this, you know those phrases that David will throw out there in the Psalms when he's like, oh God, how I love your law. Mm-hmm. And we're like, what the heck are you talking about? The law is burdensome and awful. Like that's how we treat it as Christians. The Sabbath is the gateway, in my opinion. The Sabbath is the gateway to experiencing the law of God, God's Torah, God's instruction as lovely and desirable. Because Sabbath is meant to be sweet. It's supposed to be a servant to humanity, not that we would be enslaved to it. It's meant to be a picture of the gospel, that this is what God is wanting to do. So then there's that question of practicality. How do you practice Sabbath, right? That's the question.
Mm-hmm. Could I frame it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Way? So let's frame it in the eyes of a college student.
Yes,
right? So
absolutely.
I have class and I have homework Monday. I have classes Monday through Friday. I'm an athlete, so I have training and competitions Monday through Saturday. And on top of that, because I'm a student here and I have the classes Monday through Friday, I also have homework.
Yeah.
I really don't have enough time in my week. Or it feels like I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe I do, maybe I don't actually have time in my week to maintain a healthy social life, mm-hmm. get my work done, and properly train for my sport.
Yeah.
And observe the Sabbath.
Yeah.
So what do I do? What do I do here?
That's a great
but
question.
If I do work on Sunday, do some homework, I do have time to hit that social that balance. What do we do here?
So first of all, what I want to say is I don't want my answer to be the answer of a Pharisee that ties up heavy burdens on people, and then I myself am not willing to lift a finger in order for them to carry that burden. So I don't want to create regulations either, mm-hmm. right? Because that's what they did in order for Sabbath to be properly kept. Sabbath at its core has to be a reminder of the grace of God and a mouth-watering anticipation of God's his return and redemption of all of creation. And if anything that I say in answering your question removes any of that mouth-watering anticipation and that picture of God's grace in the gospel, then don't listen to what I'm about to say. Okay?
Noted.
I will say, though, when it comes to the practical aspects of Sabbath, first of all, because Sabbath is this gift of grace and a picture of the gospel, do what you can with where you're at, with what you have. I think that's where you ought to start.
That makes sense.
So if that means that realistically you don't have more than 3 hours in the week to rest, don't try to push it to be more than that. And figure out a way to open up the door to Sabbath with that 3 hours. I will also say, you mentioned, maybe I do have the time, but it feels like I don't have the time, right? Like it does not feel like I have the time to do this. Well, the question is, what do you have time to do? Two things. I went to Bethlehem College and Seminary. I worked weekends at a furniture store, Ashley Furniture. My classes were Monday through Friday. I worked 2 nights a week, and then like a 12-hour shift on Saturday and like a 7-hour shift on Sunday, and church and all that. That was probably the worst thing that I could have done for myself, because I did that for 3 years. The only days off that I was getting was during breaks, summer break, Christmas break, all that. I was not getting any days off. It was awful. It was not good for me. To ignore, there's a quote. We'll see if we can put this in show notes. I don't remember who said it, but there's a quote that's to forsake Sabbaths and help, or Sabbaths and community, I think, is not humility, but hubris, right? You are believing about yourself that all of these, you are this important in order to get all these things done. And maybe you're not. Maybe you are properly important, and God wants to bless you with the gift of Sabbath. Here's what I would say. I think for a lot of us, it's not all of us, but a lot of us, our inability to keep Sabbath is not because we don't have the time, but we don't have the proper priorities. What I have found, I'm in seminary. I'm in seminary. I have a full-time job as a youth pastor. I have a wife and 3 kids and a house.
And a dog.
And a dog. Yeah, can't forget
dog.
Riggs. I have a lot going on. And yet, there is, from Sunday night till Tuesday morning, that my phone is off and I don't do any homework. What I've found is when I set up this time and I say, this is this time where I am going to enjoy God, my family, and his creation. And I'm not doing any work. I'm not doing any homework. I'm not going to take up those burdens of work and suffering. This is this time to enjoy God, family, and creation. I think that's what Sabbath is about, on practically what you should focus on during that time. What I have found is that my times of work and my times of rest are put in, it's like putting a picture into your picture editing software and turning the contrast up. That's what happens. When we don't have Sabbath, this intentional time of keeping Sabbath, my times of work get neat. Because we don't have rest, my time of work ends up mingling into some rest, right? So I'm working on my computer, and then, I end up watching YouTube shorts for like an hour, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm trying to get rest. But it's actually muddying and watering down my work. And then, because I know that I should be working, then any opportunity that I have for rest ends up getting some work in there. And so what it ends up being is we're constantly anxious because
I know that feeling well.
Yeah, we're caught between procrastination, which I think is the soul calling out for some rest, right? So we're stuck between the procrastination and the anxiety of knowing that we need to be doing some work. Whereas if we have this set aside time of this is what we are going to do with rest, it means my times of work can be more productive. So practically speaking, what I do, and this isn't a law in itself, it's just what we do, is Sunday night, because I have Mondays off, Sunday night I will prepare a meal. Most of the time it's me, but that's just because I love to cook. And prepare a meal. We'll have some company over because we love to invite people into the Sabbath rest that we get to experience. We try to treat that as a gift. And before the lighting of the candles, 2 candles, one for each commandment in the Old Testament of keep Sabbath, my phone is turned off. And then that does not turn on again until Tuesday morning. And we try to stay away from electronics. We have 3 kids, so, Zaboomafoo needs to get watched.
Zaboomafoo is a valid
incredible.
point.
I love that show.
Love that lemur.
He's leaping all the time.
Really is.
But then it's really good food, and then it's really good breakfast the next day, and really good lunch, and really good dinner again with a really good dessert. Because I want my kids to associate just psychologically sweetness with Sabbath, like how I always looked forward to Christmas growing up, because there were going to be presents and there was going to be like French toast or cinnamon rolls, because that was a holy day, right? It was special. I want every week those kids to be thinking, I can't wait for Sabbath because we get to have such good food, and dad's not working, mom's not working. We get to play together. It's my favorite day of the week. And you know what? God commands this play and this sweetness. Isn't God good? That's what I want for my kids. That's what I want for people. I think that's what God wants for people. When you read the Old Testament, God's commands are always serving the goal of God being with his people around a table to eat together, to enjoy each other's presence and God's goodness in creation. So the question of, is it practical? It's like, I think it's worth asking a follow-up question of, is it worth it being practical? And I think the answer is yes. Like it is worth trying to figure out of, how do I do this? How do I enjoy God, others, and his creation during my Sabbath time? What time can I set away? And I would say as much as you can, up to a day, really. That's what I would say, because it seems to me in the Bible, God commands a 1-day vacation, 1 day a week. I don't know. Does that answer the question?
No, I think it does.
Okay.
I think just that. I think it begs the question is, if you really can't fit it in, if what you have, work with what you have.
Yeah.
I think that was good.
Yeah.
But it also asks, I think asks a more a deeper and more important question, which is, okay, you can't.
Yeah.
But can you make it?
Yeah.
And I think it will challenge myself. I think it'll
Right.
challenge others to make it. I don't want to say make it work, but where can you cut back on what you're doing? If this is a priority, if your relationship with Jesus is a priority, this should be a priority. And where can you relinquish commitments in order to make it work? So I think, yes, that was a great answer to the question. And then I got one more question.
Perfect.
On the docket, which is, okay, I got my time, whether it's an hour, 3 hours, a half day, or I have the full day, a full sundown to sundown the next day, where I am not going to work and I'm going to play and rest. We've established that we're not going to create regulations or rules, but we know that work is not what we're going to do. What is it that we can do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, and I'm glad that you pointed out we're not going to establish regulations, but I think there are guidelines of...
There's guidance.
Yeah. So for me, like if it's funny, this is kind of the example that comes to my mind because, and I think it's funny because specifically, this is something that somebody got stoned for in the Old Testament.
This is funny.
Because there was a guy in the Old Testament that gathered sticks on Sabbath. And they had to stone him to death because you're not supposed to do that. Well, why? Because that was work. I'm a youth pastor. Much of my day is spent in front of my laptop planning events, planning youth group curriculums, all this kind of stuff. So on Sabbath, many times this summer, we have these trees on the outside of our fence along our property line, and several of them have died, and several need to be kept up and all that. So there's a lot of sticks back there. So me and the kids this summer and the spring would go back there with a wagon, and we'd gather all these sticks together and put it together, bring it into our backyard, and have that so that we could have bonfires and stuff like that. I don't consider gathering sticks work for me because it's not what I do the other 6 days of the week. If I did homework or lesson planning, that's work because that's what I get paid to do on the one hand, or the other is like I feel like I have to do this in order to achieve some goals. So I would say the things that you consider to be work shouldn't be done on Sabbath. If it's something that you would normally do for your job, don't do it. What you consider to be rest, what you consider to be play, do it. I also have an aversion to electronics on Sabbath. This is probably going more into the realm of just personal preference. So I want to say that. But I think it's because electronics are constant in our culture. They seem to demand your attention 24 hours a day. That's kind of what a lot of them are built to do. And so I try to cut that off. Another aspect of it is because Sabbath is not just about me, but about others and God's creation, I try to give other people rest on my Sabbath. So I don't buy anything on Mondays. My family, we don't buy anything on Sunday night through all day Monday. There is no making someone else work. My rest should not come at the expense of somebody else. I try not to drive on Sabbath either, because that's adding to the pollution in this world. And I want to give the land rest. I want the land to be able to experience some peace and quiet that won't come if I have my car's motor and loud car doing what it's going to do. So I would say the things that, for me, what I don't do is I don't do anything that I consider to be work, and I don't make anybody else do any work, which is, I think, also partly why we don't try to use electronics either, because it's making somebody work. It's making something, whether that's the land or somebody specifically, it's making something work during that time. So does that answer the question?
That's a perfect answer. Because I know, like, when you think of Sabbath, it's don't move, don't do anything physical or active. I've heard some people take it as extreme as, like, you don't get off the couch the whole day. Yeah. And you just lay there and you read your Bible the whole day or anything like that. So I know there's some confusion, and not even confusion, but just questions about what can I do and what can I not do.
Yeah.
But that answer was very helpful in that there are some guidelines you take that make sense. You know, let's not burden the land. Let's not burden other people. But at the end of the day, do what is not work, what you find pleasurable, enjoyable, and that what you might not get the opportunity to do during the week. Because for me, so it's like I lift, I train for my sport, for my health, because I love to do it. But during the week, I'm in there with efficiency in mind. Maybe I go in, if I have my rest day on Sunday, I go in and I just get lost in my workout. Or maybe I love to hike, I love to get outdoors, I love to be active. We have a great disc golf course here at Bethel and great woods, just walk around. That's kind of the stuff that was in my mind, and that gives answer to that.
With specifically this idea of enjoyment of God, enjoyment of others, enjoyment of his creation, and none of those things being burdensome, not putting a burden on any of those three. That's the other thing, is that it's a holy day, you know? So then
have the mindset of whatever you do, have a mindset of this is for more than just myself. This is a day I spend with God doing what I like to do and what he has created.
And it's good practice to be able to know these things that I enjoy are in themselves holy. Like hiking. Like that is a holy endeavor. And very often I think we have unfortunately compartmentalized what is holy and what is secular, so that it's like only what is holy is reading your Bible, listening to worship songs and praying, you know. And it's like, no, going on a hike, God created that environment for your mutual enjoyment and benefit, the creation to you and you to the creation, so that you might enjoy God more, so that you might see his beauty. So, and then another thing is that, you know, in all of this, it's a humble declaration that not only is this gift, but my time is not my own. God has a right to my time in a very profound way. And then what does that look like? Because very often I think we get scared about giving things to God because we don't know what he's going to do with it.
Could take it away, and I don't want that.
And Sabbath is this gracious regifting that God gives us, right? Where he is taking our gift of a day to him and he's giving it back to us. And I think it trains us to be better at trusting him. So
that's beautiful. Brax, thank you very much for this special episode about Sabbath. I know it was helpful for me. I hope that this conjoining with the event here at Bethel will go swimmingly. I think this is something that isn't talked about enough. I think it's good that we're talking about it. I think a lot of young people want to lean into this, and I'm excited to see what God does with this episode and does moving forward. So thank you. This has been the Sabbath special. Let's call it the Sabbath special.
Sabbath special
of Brax Tax. Again, continue to listen, reach out to us if you have any questions. We love doing this, and you know we're looking at getting a little bit more of a broader audience. We have a camera today.
We do.
Hello there. I think we'll be on YouTube.
Yeah.
Then perfect.
Yep.
So yeah, we're becoming professional. Here.
Absolutely.
But, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Brax, for talking about the Sabbath, and we'll be back with more episodes coming soon. I get to press the button. Toodaloo.